ChessDiagnostic.
Hello everybody, welcome to ChessDiagnostic. Today we're going to look at a game between Vladimir Kramnik and Garry Kasparov. Now I haven't really covered, I don't think, any of Kasparov's games, so I really wanted to just get at least one game out there, analyzing one of his incredible wins. And now this is from 1994. There are a lot of incredible Kasparov wins. There's the one versus Topalov in 1999. But this one is really special because it seems so simple upon analyzing it, just looking at it, but when you actually try to figure out these moves yourself. So I did a guess the move training with this game, and it's incredibly hard to find. It's counterintuitive at first, but again, I know I keep talking about activity, but we'll see how Garry Kasparov's deep understanding of tactics and activity lead to a shattering win here, a very surprising win. So Kasparov's black. It starts with d4, knight to f6, c4, g6. So we're going towards the King's Indian defense, which was a favorite of Garry Kasparov. Now he liked it because it was very dynamic. It's definitely not boring. You're going to get either a crazy attack on the king side or queen side. It can be anywhere really, depending on what white does and what black does. So of course in the opening we're just going for standard development. It's kind of a hyper-modern idea where black's going to control the center from a distance. Bishop to g7, e4, d6, knight to f3, castle. So we're at the standard King's Indian type formation with, I guess you could consider it a Sicilian dragon type formation, but except white has this huge pawn center. Kramnik decides to just continue with normal development. Now this is of course a theory line where it looks like you can just take the pawn and win a pawn, but actually after a trade here, for example, if he takes, then we'll actually see knight takes f4 with a tactic. So he'll get his pawn back, but this is actually advantageous for black, and you don't see that at the top level, but I just wanted to point out that tactic there. And of course with e5, it kind of establishes this central pawn structure for white, and it becomes the main strategic focus of black to make sure he develops his pieces and establishes a strong queen side. So we see a5, and now the main idea of a5, of course, is to prevent b4, but the importance of that is he wants to bring his knight to a6 and then to c5. So he's really thinking about these two undeveloped queenside pieces at this point in the game. Bishop to g5, giving a little space on the king side and also giving himself the option of playing g5 eventually with a tempo. And now here we see the standard development. Now the knight goes back for white to d2 to prepare something like either f4, which is really aggressive, or f3, maintaining his central pawn structure, because black would love to play f5 eventually. And now we see the special position after... Oh, I apologize for that. So we see the special position for white after b3. Now he played b3, makes logical sense because black was going to play a4. But here we get a very special home preparation by Kasparov. Now if you want to think about it, I know I just flicked through real quick, so I'll try to edit that out. But let's see here if you want to figure out what black does at this point. Alright, so at this point he actually plays knight takes e4, sacking his queen. Now the drawback for white of b3 is that it left this knight undefended, but if we do a material count after bishop takes queen, knight takes, now the queen moves, because for example if we went here, then we'd actually just get a huge advantage for black. He'd win 3 minor pieces for the queen. But instead he only gets 2. But it's really down to Kasparov's evaluation of activity. How does this make any sense? He's traded 2 minor pieces for a queen. Now this is the kind of understanding of activity that I don't know if I'll ever acquire, probably not. It's incredibly hard to come up with these ideas because you really have to trust the fundamental principles of the game, and I guess if you're 2800, then you've officially done that. But even Kramnik didn't see this coming, obviously, so it's not an easy thing to understand. But if we look at White's pieces, the rook, the bishop, the queen, which is almost completely passive, and the knight as well, there's really no activity of these pieces at all, and Black has the 2 bishops, and with f5 and e4, he'll really lock down this position. So technically, according to the computer, White has a tiny advantage, and it should be equal. Now, Kasparov chose this line because it's very easy to go wrong for White, and it's actually quite natural to make the moves for Black. So let's see what happened. The rook moves to attack the knight, which gives away a pawn, but actually that's a big mistake. I used a computer to analyze what would be the best line for White, and it actually would be f3, quite counterintuitive. And there's really no good option. Well, that's a mistake there. There's really no good option for White. Bishop to c2. This isn't the line of the game. This is just the best possible computer line. But even at this point, you can see it's very difficult for White, I mean, to figure out an active plan. So when playing against humans, sometimes it's better to choose a very active plan, which leaves your opponent inactive, and because of that, you'll have a much greater advantage in activity. So we're going back here. So after the knight takes the pawn, after knight to b4, threatening a fork here, the bishop moves back, and Kasparov basically has all of the squares on lockdown after e4. Of course, based on tactics, you wouldn't want to take that pawn because he's threatening this rook here. So the rook has to move, and then he secures the e4 pawn, which is a thorn in White's side, reducing all of his activity. And so we see here Kasparov is totally active and actually ready to start his own kingside attack. Using these 2 knights are really stronger than this queen because they completely lock down everything on White's side. Pushing pawns and opening lines. There he played g5, protecting that f2 pawn. So he'd really love to trade that active rook. But after doubling rooks, there's really, again, no good active plan for White. So Kasparov sacked another pawn, but that allows him to get his knight to f4 and establish another knight. So both of these knights have swung in over to the king side. White is starting to feel quite cramped with all of these black pieces swarming around his king. Ideas eventually to play bishop to d4. This bishop's going to come in, and these 2 rooks are very strong, especially since White has these 3 pretty helpless pieces and aren't doing anything. Alright, so White has tried to free himself with a pawn sacrifice, but again, there's no active plan. And after g4, Kramnik decides to relieve the pressure by giving his queen back. So at this point, material's equal, except Kasparov has an extra pawn and a much better position, a totally winning position. Kramnik plays on for a few more moves, but after knight to f4, we see Kramnik resign. And the reason for that is if he moves his king anywhere, he's going to be either checkmated or Kasparov will be queening that pawn soon. Either he has to give up his knight, just kind of a spite check, and after bishop to d4 check, he queens, and there's nothing to do. So an absolutely incredible game. I know I'm kind of just giving not the most thorough analysis, but you can learn a lot from going through these types of games where you see how very strong players make decisions on sacrifices. And of course, the technicalities of finishing off a position like this would be very difficult, but it's good calculation work. And hope you learned something. If you have any questions, leave it below in the comments. If you like this video, leave it a like, and I'll see you in the future. Thanks for watching. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for future videos. See you in the future.